towards some of our other more on-point discussions. We're going to start off with the Olympics, specifically women's hockey at the Olympics, as they are already in their quarterfinal stage. Canada defeated Sweden 11-0.
Yeah.
Outrageous, as the U.S. also beat the Czechs 4-1. It was 4 unanswered goals for the U.S. Now, Canada will play the winner of Russia and Switzerland, and the U.S. will play the winner of Finland and Japan. Barring a drastic upset, we will see Canada against the U.S. women. And based off of Canada's form right now, despite the U.S. being the defending champions, yeah, this is Canada's tournament to lose. I mean, this is outrageous, just how much offense they've been able to put up so far.
Yeah, definitely. And I do have like a little point about the Canadian development system and how things have changed this year compared to years before. I'll get to that after because it's really interesting. It's a really it goes into a bigger argument into like women's hockey in general, but I'll save that for a little bit after. But like it's great. They're doing really, really well.
Dude, they have 44 goals in 5 games.
Yep.
They're averaging 8.8 goals for a game. I mean, my God, it's just they are on such a different level. And then on the men's side of things, worth noting for the women's team, they actually upset Czechia 3-2 for their first ever Olympic win. And then the men's team for Denmark as well also beat the Czechs for a 2-1 win for their first Olympic win. So shout out to Denmark making improvements. But on the men's side of things, obviously the tournament started a little bit later. The U.S. and Canadian teams both won their opening match. The U.S. beat China 8-0. Canada over Germany 5-1. Endo, I'll let you give your thoughts for the Canadian side. But for the U.S. side, the big thing to note is that granted, it was China. But the big thing to note is that Sean Farrell is ungoddamn believable. He's a Montreal Canadiens 4th round pick in 2020. He looked outrageous in this game. He's over a point per game right now for Harvard too in the NCAA. The hype level surrounding this guy is going to skyrocket after this tournament. I think it's already skyrocketed because a lot of people are like, who the hell is that? And now all of a sudden you hear the name Sean Farrell. It's like, oh yeah, the guy from the Olympics.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's not from Quebec, so he'll be dealt.
Nope, he's a Massachusetts guy.
Yeah, he'll be dealt, to a team. Can't they got to have a good balance. They need some francophones in that locker.
Well, I mean, hey, we'll be talking about the Habs here in a little bit too. Endo Mills, did you catch the Canadian game? If you didn't, welcome to America because you're about to get booted out.
That's okay. I caught a little bit of the Canada game. I mostly caught a good one of the guys from the hockey writers, the hockey news. Sorry, his tweets of images of the game itself, because he can't like show the case of the game, and he just put like little like doodle drawings of it. I think it's Stephen Ellis, and I caught it from there.
Good friend of the show, Mr. Stephen Ellis.
Can't show the game.
Very good friend of the show
because of licensing thing, and NBC's freaking out because their coverage is, or I don't know. Is that a licensing thing? Why you couldn't show it?
Probably. Also,
okay.
The Olympics are very strict. The Olympics are very, very strict when it comes to DMCA stuff. Like, so, like, anytime you put a clip on there, like, they can take it off unless you.
No wonder I haven't seen any highlights. I mean, granted, I'm not fucking on Twitter much anymore, but yeah, I was like, there's no highlights of the Olympics.
Yeah.
Is it even going on? Is NBC even promoting it?
You do have to kind of go out of your way. Like
in
terms of highlights, it's tough. YouTube really is the best spot for it.
That's kind of crazy. And I heard that I was seeing some whispers that NBC is actually kind of pissing and moaning that people aren't watching it, and I'm just like, bro, like honestly, like as a casual viewer who doesn't seek out the Olympics, I've like learned no way of how to easily access it, whether by stream, whether by like snippets, highlights. It's kind of crazy. Like how is NBC even promoting it? Because I haven't heard much.
Watch 8 o'clock prime time every night on NBC. That's basically it. So now there was one down note that's kind of tied into the Olympics that's actually somewhat breaking news that I cannot speak on all that much. But Katie Strang, who again has been one of the key reporters in the hockey world alongside Rick Westhead over the past year or so, is where her name has really started to get out there a lot more. She's noted that USA Hockey has been reported to Congress for potential interference in U.S. Center for Safe Sport investigation. So basically, how that sums up,
For the Reed Boucher.
there is shady shit potentially going on with USA Hockey. The idea is essentially, and I'll read this top. It's a free article for everyone to read. In the letter addressed to USA Hockey executive Pat Kelleher and President Mike Trimboli, a Republican Senator Chuck Grassley out of Iowa, the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, reminded USA Hockey of their legal obligation under the Empowering Olympic, Paralympic, and Amateur Athletes Act of 2020 that they have the duty to report any reasonable suspicion of child abuse to both law enforcement and the center.
No.
And there is a chance that they have not fulfilled that obligation to report such things. Again, I will leave that full article out there. Katie J. Strang on Twitter. In case you wanted more bad news in the hockey world.
Is this regarding
there
the
you go.
Is this regarding the Reed Boucher thing?
I don't believe so. I think this is something else.
Isn't Reed Boucher Canadian?
Yeah, but
I'm actually not sure.
He's
I don't know.
American born.
So, yeah, okay, another part of the article is USA Hockey's come under scrutiny for how it handled allegations of sexual misconduct. Former USA President Jim Smith was investigated by the Center for Safe Sport because of allegations he mishandled claims of sexual abuse involving former prominent Chicago area youth and college hockey coach, some douchebag that I will not name. The matter was closed by Safe Sport, but Smith later announced he would not seek re-election, referencing these allegations and telling members of the need to be totally united moving forward. So basically, there's just as tiring as it can be, right? Because with the Chicago hockey team, we heard about what happened with Rockford and their coach getting fired. Basically, we keep lifting up stones and finding the seedy, scummy underbelly that is a part of the hockey world. And Katie Strang continuing to cover that, and I give her all the credit in the world. So we'll leave it at that. It's still a developing thing, but worth noting to go check that out and read that article if you can stomach it at this point, which it can be rather difficult to do.
Yeah. Gross.
And what did you want to mention Olympic-wise here before we move on?
Yeah, let's have some good news here, because God, that took me for that caught me off guard here. So I wanted to talk about the development of the Canadian women's national team, and they've absolutely kicked the doors down and dominated so far in this tournament, and in the Olympics. Sorry. So one of the things that is very, very common for women's national teams to develop their players is for them to play against AAA level teams. It's very common in the women's hockey space. Now, Hockey Canada decided this year to try something a little different, and they immediately went to Junior A. Like, immediately went to go play Junior A teams over in the Western Canada. So they went to go play Alberta and BC. This is an article reading from CB24 Sport, cp24.com. Basically news here in Canada. So one of the things though was it's a big jump because AAA and Junior A is like you're basically playing with guys you're basically on the cusp of making into professional hockey. They did not do well. They did very, very bad. I think they played 5 games and they were swept and outscored 30-2. Now, a lot of at first you realize that and you're like, oh damn, like they need a lot more work. And then it makes you think that a player like Marie-Philippe Poulin is on par with like someone who's basically still living with their parents playing hockey. And that begins the whole detracting hockey and saying women's hockey shouldn't be getting paid and all that. The one thing I do want to mention on that as well is that women's hockey is still a brand new concept, especially being accepted not only just here in North America, but worldwide. And for them to basically take this jump and to go up against like guys who are basically at that skill level is huge. It's something we haven't seen before, and it's something that I definitely want to see. And I think that was basically like the biggest moment for them to develop, is because they came after these games. They said, we lost, we got handed to us, but we were able to break down how they played and how to put that into our game. And clearly you can see like they've been outscoring opponents like crazy. Like what was it, 11-0 in the last game against
Hasn't that kind of always happened though in the Olympics? At least that I recall.
What's that?
Canada
Not
just
this
absolutely
bad.
dominating.
not
Really?
this big of a
Maybe it was U.S.
domination.
I remember U.S. played like Japan or something like that, and I remember watching the game. They beat them like 12-1. I don't know. I can't
Canada's
remember.
always been like a powerhouse, but it hasn't been like the margin hasn't been this big like ever, and it's something that I've definitely noticed about, and people are noticing that as well. So I wanted to look into it a little bit more, and this shows that like hockey is growing, especially in Canada, and it would be even better if these other companies, not companies, other countries and hockey bodies saw this kind of stuff they're doing and were able to adapt it to their development as well. Because sure, the girls are getting shelled, but it put them in a different playing field. Whereas they're used to being dominant on top and being the top dog and basically going through every opponent. It put them in a different aspect and made them very uncomfortable, and they had to adapt and learn from it. And I think we're definitely going to be on the cusp of big improvements for women's hockey, obviously here in Canada and North America, but just worldwide if this concept goes for other places.
The best way to improve is to play people who are at a higher skill level, generally. So, yeah, that's a good way to develop.
Yeah, so far,
I
so
will
good.
say, I mean, a lot of people I think forget too just how new the idea of organized women's hockey is. And again, I've mentioned this video before. Endo and I talked about or did a video covering the 98 Olympics in Nagano, which was the first time women's hockey was at the Olympics. 1998. I mean, Sin and I are both older than women's hockey at the Olympics happens to be. Like, this is a very recent thing. Now, I did have to go through and look at the Canadian women's track record, at least in the preliminary stage. I do agree with Sin. They have pretty much always been dominant, maybe not to this extent. 2002, 25 goals, 0 against in 3 games in the preliminary round. 06 in Turin was 36 goals, 4, 1 against in 3 games. And then 2010 in Vancouver, 41 goals, 4, 2 against in 3 games. So the Canadian women have, I would say, always been rather dominant, but the idea is they're this dominant and they keep striving to get better.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you want to see. Like, they're not just being like, okay, we're the best, that's it. Like, they are continuing to try and develop the talent level of these players, especially moving forward. And I think that's obviously the right move. So that's fantastic to see. And gold medal game, U.S. and Canada, I'm sure we'll be talking about very soon. No disrespect to the other women in the tournament and the other nations, but I mean, come on.